we get really comfortable in our skin and in our addictions, and it's really hard to break that. But that's why I think the health and happiness is the most important thing, and that's mentally and physically. So for me, this kind of, that hits both of those. I meditate, I get up, I stretch, I can do my bike ride 2, 3, 4 times a week, just, it depends. But I get out, at least once a week and do it. And for me, going through those actions, it releases those endorphins, it keeps me happy and healthy, and it allows me to kind of have the confidence to do that, to try different things.
You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
Welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. I'm pleased to be joined today by Parker Boone. After a sudden disappearance by his father, Parker turned to alcohol to cope with his loss. After years of struggling with alcohol abuse, Parker, with the help of his family, checked into a 3-month recovery program. Once sober, he purchased a bike as transportation to his new job. Little did he know that that simple bike purchase would turn into his new passion and path for his and others' long-term recovery. Welcome to the show, Parker.
Thanks. Good morning, Damon.
So glad to have you on today. And, when I first spoke with you via phone, we talked about passion, finding your passion in recovery. And that is really what you have done. And you'll elaborate a little bit more on that and about how you did that. But first, tell us kind of what happened. How did you get here? How did this whole journey start?
Yeah, I had a family tragedy with my father. I've got, a really close network, a close family, and he went missing. And we'll keep that part of it short. But through that incident, I had a kind of a deep, dark depression that kind of set in over time. And, I used alcohol, drugs to kind of, take away that pain and that feeling. And, it's interesting just how it's kind of a selfish act when you think of it, that you're participating in something that's kind of taking you away from reality and your family and your loved ones, and, watching them and seeing how they're affected. And, looking back on that, it's really, it's a blessing to be here and be here today talking with you. So,
I mean, Parker, what's really interesting about your story is, I don't know if you had any inclination that you might have a problem with addiction before your father went missing, but it was a rather dramatic thing that happened where all of a sudden your dad's there one day and literally he's not. There's a big question mark. And you just really kind of, how did you deal with that? So you turn to alcohol and drugs to kind of probably block that out, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I hid. Usually I was a social person. I played sports. I had a lot of friends. And, when that depression hits you, I had more of a sense of hiding. I like to go, instead of going out and hanging out with friends and doing things, I would, go hide out in my room or drink and do drugs. And that's just such a sad, terrible way to live. And it wasn't, until finally family members and loved ones were kind of, trying to kick me out of that zone. And I did need help. And I think I needed help probably before, maybe that whole incident went down too. I think I had maybe a natural inclination to be more of that addictive personality, or, someone that would kind of crutch or lean on things like that. So I kind of had a little bit of that in me. I believe that could be part of the, genetic fabric that they talk about with alcoholism or with drug addiction. But whatever that, attraction was, I had it. I didn't just, create it out of thin air or just lean on it. But I drank, I partied, I did drugs before that incident. So, I had a little bit of
they
a
always
history.
say, we've done shows on trauma here at Recovered Life, that, trauma will escalate an addiction problem that maybe it was something that was there, but maybe would not have been so prevalent, or maybe would have taken you years to be able to get to the point, right, where you realize that it was a really big problem. But then trauma really escalates that. So you end up in this recovery program for 3 months. And then, I read this story on you where you said, hey, I got to get a job. And then you got to get to the job. And you somewhat stumbled into this passion that has really carried you throughout your whole recovery.
Yeah. I grew up cycling, and I had mountain bikes and BMX bikes and road bikes early on. I enjoyed it. I already had a level of passion for it, which kind of dwindled when I hit, high school, and you become an adult. Other things become important than bicycles. But the aesthetic of it, the art of it, the health aspect of it, the fitness of it really appealed to me, and it never left. And I always still did it. It was still part of, one of the things that I would do outside of, going to meetings or things like that. And it's something that I can kind of do by myself as an individual. And that was kind of like my time to get away, my time to meditate, my time to think. And it was a great resource and an outlet for me. I did. I had a bike, and I had to get to, my first job was Trader Joe's, and I had to ride that fixed gear up PCH. My job was usually at night. And so I'd get off at 10, and I'd ride from San Juan Capistrano, where my sober living was at, up to Newport Beach and back. And it was kind of a fun ride on PCH. There's not really a bike lane in sections of it. So it's a little bit sketchy, which was, fun, kind of added a bit of excitement for the ride home and the ride to. But that was kind of like the beginning of setting that passion in motion again.
When you first get sober, many people are really kind of left with a lot of questions, right? Like, why am I here? What am I going to do? I thought my life was going to be one way. And, you got sober young. So it's like, so you're now sitting there saying, well, how am I going to reinvent my life? Basically, what am I going to do? Right. And what I love about your story is that you kind of, look, you had passion for cycling when you were, I think everybody, right? Like, I know I had BMX bikes and 10 speeds, and, everybody, from my generation wanted the blue Schwinn, right? We got the blue Schwinn, and then we wanted the mountain bike. And, biking is such a big part, especially if you live in California. You basically grew up on a bike, right? If you live in the suburbs or anywhere. So, what I love about your story is that this unfolding, if you will, into something that was bigger than, hey, I'm kind of enjoying this time by myself and this time to be able to meditate, going back and forth to work, to, hey, I want to take this a little bit further.
Yeah. It's something that I want to share and kind of get other people involved with. And, fast forward after going through so many years of sober livings and rehabs and going through that, the thing that I found the most important was, for one, giving back was really important to me. They say working with other alcoholics is such a great means of, creating strength for yourself personally. And that still, I think, really holds true. I enjoy doing that. But more than that, people need an outlet, and mine was easy because I had it the whole time. I just kind of found it again. But there's a lot of people that haven't been exposed to it. And, that was important to me, that, a lot of things didn't work. And it seems like I struggled for so long in AA and in sober livings. And, some of that is the recovery industry, and some of it is people that are just wholeheartedly giving their time and their efforts and parts of their lives, to give back. And that's kind of, I feel more of that nature. And, that's kind of the route that was important to me. So that's kind of what I'm spreading is, hey, you don't have to, go to AA twice a day. You don't need to necessarily do these things that everyone's telling you, but you do need time to meditate, and you need time for yourself. And for me, that was a way I could kind of knock both of those things out. And, we have a lot of friends in AA, and the cycling world is pretty cool.
Yeah, you crafted your own, you used what obviously that you learned through these recovery programs and through 12 steps. But then what you did is you kind of almost took that, what I love, and then you extended it into this passion that you have. Tell us a little bit about how you've used this to stay sober and helped other people get sober through cycling.
Yeah, so that's important, right? I work in the cycling industry, so I'm really lucky that I get to do what I love, and that made that adaptation and that transition really easy for me, which I think is why I've succeeded and I've stayed sober, and alcohol isn't something that I fear anymore. I can be around it. I'm comfortable with my own skin. And I think that's the most important thing, is that people need to be healthy and they need to be happy. And for those things to take place, you got to rid yourself of the drugs and alcohol. You got to cleanse your body, and you need to set up a lifestyle that would be conducive, for the rest of your life. And that, I think, was the hardest part for me, was getting rid of old friends and old habits and creating a new lifestyle. And this was really easy. Like I said, for me to really take on cycling, and, riding in groups was big. I'd ride to all these AA meetings, and, people would kind of laugh. And my bike is, that's the Instagram that I chose to kind of show the bike off. It's an ugly blue bike. It's pretty beat up, but it's got such a pretty beautiful story. I thought that, oh, maybe that's, kind of what I'll go with. So I started an Instagram account called Ugly Blue Bike. And that was just kind of like my dedication to how cycling helped me get sober.
And it also allows you to work with people who are new, right? Or people who are maybe what they call sober curious, where it's like maybe alcohol is a problem for them, but they're not necessarily going to walk into a 12-step meeting right away. They don't maybe feel comfortable with that, but they maybe have a passion for cycling or have ridden bikes before and want to go on a ride with you. And through these group rides, do you find that they're almost like 12-step meetings?
They are. Yeah, they're very therapeutic like that, in a sense. I found that for me, when I got to the AA rooms, it was too late. Like, I was already a full-blown daily alcoholic, physically addicted. If I stopped, I'd have a seizure. And I think a lot of people get to that point. I wasn't like sober curious, like, hey, I'm going to go try out a meeting. It was way too late before I hit my first AA meeting. But what I'm finding is, people that have learned about my sobriety through cycling, they've come to me, and they're not people that are drug addicts or alcoholics, but they're people that are, they're curious about fitness, or they're curious about what not drinking might do, or what not doing drugs might do. They're not addicted by any means, but it's part of their lifestyle. And they're like, well, maybe I can kind of do without, or maybe I can take that out and kind of fit in other things. And that's good. That's all good, happy, wholesome type stuff that I get to, deal with. I have a lot of friends out of the blue that I haven't seen for a long time that have come and reached out. So.
Yeah. And I think, what I love about your story is, I think anyone who has been sober for a period of time has seen people who have they've gotten sober, they're sober, and they've maybe gone through 12 step, they've done therapy, they've done everything, but they're miserable. They have no passion. I sometimes call it like, they're stuck in the church basement, right? Like they're really miserable, right? And they're really not doing anything, and they don't really know what to do. A lot of that comes from, I think, fear, right? Like, it's just like, well, if I do this, I might relapse. And if I don't do this, I might relapse. So they're just stuck in fear. And what I like about your story is that you used everything that you learned in 12 steps. You used everything that you learned in these recovery programs, and you extended it into your lifestyle and created a life around it. What advice would you give to people who are stuck and they need to find a passion? And maybe it's not going to be cycling, right, Parker? Maybe it's going to be something totally different. What advice would you give to them about maybe taking some risks to go out and try to find their passion?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? We get really comfortable in our skin and in our addictions, and it's really hard to break that. But that's why I think, the health and happiness is the most important thing, and that's mentally and physically. So for me, this kind of, that hits both of those. I meditate, I get up, I stretch, I can do I bike ride 2, 3, 4 times a week, just, it depends. But I get out, at least once a week and do it. And for me, going through those actions, it releases those endorphins. It keeps me happy and healthy, and it allows me to kind of have the confidence to do that and to try different things. Where before, you're right, you have that fear of, it could be something as simple as going to the DMV and renewing, your driver's license, which I probably didn't do for 2 years based off of fear and being a drug addict and an alcoholic, and things like that are just so simple. But, you take baby steps. It starts small, and, you have to create a little bit of a base, I think. So that's why it's so tough. It takes time and effort, and we just get so used to instant gratification with our background and the things that we do, that it is hard to, create this whole new lifestyle where you really have to earn it. There's none of this stuff is given. This is all character building type things that aren't given to you. It's not financial. It's not things that money can buy you. That's kind of the hard stuff you have to learn on your own. But that's
what
why
about
we have
people, Parker, who say that, you're just trading one addiction with another addiction? So I have there's a good friend of the Recovered Life show who watches every episode that's on recoveredlife.us, who's a member that comments. He loves golf, right? I mean, just passionate about golf. And everybody, every once in a while, people will comment, hey, you know what? You've just traded alcoholism for golf, right? And he's very into recovery and he's got a great program. But he, and he's just like, hey, you know what? I'm passionate about it. I love it. He's retired. He golfs all the time. He made the announcement the other day that he has 35 pairs of golf shoes, right? And somebody says, well, you're just trading one passion for, you're just trading one addiction for another addiction. What would be your comment on that?
Yes, correct. It is to a degree. I wouldn't call this an addiction. It's healthy. But I think we're using some other kind of, athletic event or something to create those same fun feelings that our brain admits when we take drugs or alcohol. For me, cycling works. I surf, I rock climb. I've got 3 brothers that I can go play with that really, played a big role in helping me get sober. So having those types of people and activities around are very important, whether it's golf, cycling, flying kites, throwing frisbees. You have to do something with that time that we're spending drinking and doing drugs and going through that whole routine. Well, the routine just changes. So it's replacing your addiction with something that's taking that time. I don't know if I'd call it an addiction. For me, it is. I have 36 pairs of cycling shoes. No, I don't, but it's a lot of fun. Can't have too many helmets, can't have too many shoes.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think one thing that we know about alcoholics is they tend to be all or nothing people. So when you see people come in and they get sober and they find their passion, they do have, 18 bike helmets or whatever, right? Like
we have a lot of energy
they do.
Yeah.
We're kind of all or nothing people, and we like to throw ourselves into things, but I don't find anything wrong with somebody who has a passion and they're very, I would call it more of a passion or something that they're doing, right?
Yeah.
I always look at addiction as people maybe say, addictions have kind of a negative connotation that
it is, right? It's condescending when you have an addiction.
Yeah,
but if you have a passion,
hurting you or whatever. But I found in your case, and in so many people's cases, this passion has really created balance in their life, right? It's allowed them to actually live their best recovered life sober, which is really what this show is all about, right? It's really about not just staying sober. Staying sober is great, and you have to stay sober to experience the rest of the stuff. But in closing here, Parker, what would you say about your life now? Would you be able to look back, let's just say years ago before you got sober, and be able to look at your life now and imagine how great it is?
No, never. I didn't think I would make it physically. I always thought that, there was going to be some kind of consequence. And I'm sure, life is short. I'm here today and I'm happy and I'm healthy and I hope I make it tomorrow. And that's kind of, the way we started. Getting sober is an act, but staying sober, I guess, is a lifestyle. I don't know, but, I'm happy and I'm healthy right now. And so I'm doing those things that kind of, keep me balanced. And, I found something for me that's really fit into what I do. And, I always grew up doing sports and being somewhat of an athletic person. So for me, this, it slipped right in pretty easy.
Parker Boone, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Where can they find out more about you, your passion for cycling?
Thanks for having me, Damon. Yeah, you can get me on my Instagram is Ugly Blue Bike. The Great Blue Book is, of course, the AA Blue Book, but you can check that out too at your AA meetings.
Parker Boone, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, Damon.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.